Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to another episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast, where we explore the journeys of innovators, disruptors, and problem solvers who turn ideas into thriving businesses. Today, I'm joined by someone who embodies both the grit of a behind-the-scenes fixer and the vulnerability of a heart-led leader. Meghan Cathlin, founder of Considerate Ventures, has spent more than 25 years supporting artists, authors, celebrities, and CEOs. Known as an unassuming and elegant fixer, she brings calm, order, and warmth to complex projects ranging from major concerts to memoirs. Her journey hasn't been straightforward. Meghan grew up facing deep hardship. She lost her father to suicide, lived in poverty, dropped out of school, and overcame abusive relationships. Yet, she credits these experiences with awakening her heart-led philosophy. She believes the head is a great tool for analyzing the past, but out of its depth when guiding us into our brightest future. And she's learned that when we achieve heart coherence, we think more clearly, regulate our emotions, and gain greater intuition. Today, she channels those insights into her upcoming book, Leading from the Heart, The Courage to Trust Your Inner Wisdom and Rewrite Your Life, and into the bespoke services she provides through Considerate Ventures. Her clients describe her as having an intuitive sixth sense and a rare ability to shepherd high-pressure projects with both grace and humor. In this episode, we'll dive into how Meghan navigated her transition from a behind-the-scenes organizer to a purpose-driven entrepreneur, and why she intentionally keeps her client roster small, and what it means to lead with the heart in business and in life. If you've ever felt drawn to entrepreneurship but hesitant to claim the title, Meghan's story will inspire you. Tune in as we discuss overcoming adversity, embracing both the superhero and the hot mess within, and why serving others can be the most powerful motivation of all. And it all begins right now. Meghan Cathlin, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation. I'm going to start off, apologies to my audience, I'm going to start off going a little deep. And I'm going to read a section that I read that you wrote about your journey. After climbing from the great despair of a painful childhood and many tragedies that followed, I found myself at the top of my game in life. In one moment, as an 8th grade dropout, I spent my days drinking with a homeless man and a band of lost souls. Years later, in yet another moment, I was producing major music events, flying in private jets, and hanging with the rich and famous. That is a journey. Walk me and my audience through that journey, Meghan.
It is a very long story, but I'll do the snippets. As you mentioned, my childhood was definitely rich with adversity. From an early age, I lost my father to suicide. We grew up in poverty. I sunk into the despair and moments of depression that came with all of that, and really just let go and gave up at an early age, and dropped out of society, dropped out of school, and really kind of gave up for a period of time. But at a certain point, I came back to myself. I came back to my heart, as I like to write about in my book. And I really started to want more. And I looked around and I saw that the people that were surrounding me were definitely going down one path, and I didn't want to join them in that path. So I slowly started to find my way again. And part of the way that happened is I was 14 and I was going to visit my homeless friend Jimbo. I was going to bring him a cheese sandwich, which was a piece of cheap white bread, a sliver of, or a little squirt of mustard, cheap cheese, and then another piece of white bread. And I went to bring him that sandwich, and he was asking me what I was planning to do that day. And I looked across the street, and there was a warehouse of buildings, a little complex of warehouse buildings. And one of them was a jewelry supply store that sold materials for jewelers. So I walked across the street, opened the door, and the manager was just locking up. And he asked me what I was doing, if he could help me. And there was a for hire sign on the door. And I said, I'm here for the job. And he interviewed me right away. I wrote 16 on the application. And that led me into a world that was back to the normal people, back to conventional living. So I worked there for about 2 years, and I was exposed to people who lived conventional lives. I started to want to have more of that for myself. But what's most important is that one of my customers worked backstage security for concerts. So a couple of years later, I reached out to him and asked if his concert promoter that he was working for might be hiring. And the very day I reached out, his assistant had just walked out the door. So I had an interview that night, and I was hired to work for the concert promoter as an assistant. And that was really the pivot for me that took me from that darker, unconventional life back into the world. And I was about 18 when I started working for him, which was a beautiful thing because I was really early and young in my career, but I had landed a dream job. And he was a wonderful promoter. He was very meticulous at everything he did, but he was very messy with his office organization. So I was just so excited to organize everything that he had. And one of the things that he did was he had a stack of business cards, and he would wrap it up in rubber bands, throw it in his briefcase when we would travel for shows. And that was the way he stayed in touch with his contact list. So I took things like that and organized them into lists that he could use. And he was really willing to let me dabble in whatever I felt like dabbling in. So from an early age, I started learning how to book bands and run security meetings and build the timelines, and it just fit like a glove. So that's what got me into the career, and that's what led me to meeting a lot of high profile people. And I would need a lot more time to really share all the stories that grew me to the next point. But essentially, it gave me access. I was able to refine my skills. I went back to college, and slowly, very slowly, I reformed myself, and I was able to stay in this industry that I loved and keep growing from there. The one essential thing to say, though, is that I worked myself to the bone to try and recover from my past. So I found myself very burnt out and seeking perfection. And it was in that burnout that I realized I was doing some things wrong. I was pursuing external success and I was doing well, but I knew I needed this internal path to be developed. And that's really what led me on this other heart-led path. And it's also what changed my whole life, because that led me to not only improving my life, but also starting to advise and mentor and coach many of my clients that were in that music and entertainment business. So there's a big bunch of information. How did I do?
Amazing. Very inspiring. You know, your journey reminds me of my wife's journey. My
Oh,
wife grew up in a pretty dysfunctional household in Scotland, and both her parents were alcoholics and partiers, and I mean they were great parents in every other way, but they had different priorities, and the commonality that I see here is when you join the conventional world, the real world in your job, you had this what I would describe, at least as I heard it, as this overwhelming sense of organization. You wanted to organize your clients, and my wife is the exact same way. She is, I mean, I would say as a husband, almost to a fault, but clearly it's not to a fault. She is hyper organized. Everything needs to be in order, and we do a lot of vacations with our friends, and she's the organizer for all of that. She's like a travel agent, and everything is organized to the minute. And I think there's something to do with the chaos of your younger life led to a need to not have that in your adult life, right? I mean, I think if you're like my wife, she needs to have a sense of order and a sense of organization and a sense of control, not in a negative way, to kind of take her further away from the chaos that she had as a child in that environment. Does that ring true with you? Do you think that's where your organizational skills and desires came from?
I do. I think it's a need, and I also think it's just a training. We just overdeveloped that part of our skill set from an early age. We had to create order where we could. And so that just grew a superpower that we didn't really want to have to need. So I think it's a need, and it's also just a part of what's happened to our brains. We've just become wired to make things as pretty as possible because we've had enough of the mess. And
Yeah.
it was up
Yeah.
to the mess. So yes, I do agree that a lot of these hardships create superpowers for us, and it's the balance of how do we be good to ourselves in that later in life so it doesn't become a drain, but something that actually serves.
Yeah, I think the pendulum definitely swings to the opposite direction for the good, right? That's almost it's what starts as a survival mechanism becomes a superpower, as you said. You had mentioned both on your website and just a few minutes ago that you lost your father to suicide, lived in poverty, dropped out of school, faced abusive relationships. How have those experiences shaped your character in the way you show up as an entrepreneur?
Well, there's a couple of big ways. One of them is realizing from an early age how prevalent suffering is, how universal it is. Um, Seeing so much so early exposed me to a lot of pain. And what I learned early on is that it wasn't just me, it was really everyone. And at first I did think it was just me and my lost souls that I was hanging out with. But soon enough I learned that it happened even for the rich and the privileged and the beautiful and the famous. I learned that suffering comes for each of us. So I really humanized things for me, and it really gave me a sense of common humanity, which is the Buddhist principle of we are all more alike than we are different. And so carrying that into the business world has been wonderful, and it's a big reason that I'm not intimidated by powerful people because I know that it's no prettier behind the scenes than it is for my
Right.
home friend Jimbo. So that's one big thing, and the other big part is just having a sense of just understanding that there's a clean slate. So I think when you lose everything or when you feel a great sense of hardship in your life, you sometimes can feel shame about it. But for
Mm.
me, it created a clean slate for me. I realized there was only one way to go. It was either stay down there or go up. And the nice thing about that is that I didn't have any conventional teachings that told me what success had to look like. So because I was only going up, I had a clean slate to decide what that looked like. I think a lot of people who have less adversity at an early age have a lot of thoughts in their heads about how they should do success, what they should be pursuing. I didn't have any of that. So kind of in a way, everything was open for me to consider. So those things really helped with my entrepreneurial path.
Yeah, I think the things that happened in your past, though tragic, I would almost be bold enough to say not regrettable. I mean, they are regrettable, obviously. Losing your father, for example, that's regrettable. But they were also positive change agents in building the new Megan, right? Because if you didn't change, if you had two choices, you could just follow that path, and then at this point, someone would be making you cheese sandwiches right now, or you could just build the Megan that you wanted to have all along, and that's what happened. Fortunately, you write that the head is great for analyzing the past, but out of its depth when guiding us into our brightest future. When did you realize heart-led decision-making was key for you, and how was that influenced by your business choices? Or
Well,
how has it influenced your business choices, I should say?
it's been a process like most things are, but my big moment was really when my dad committed suicide. When I found out that he committed suicide, so he died when I was 5, but I didn't know the truth of his death until I was 7. My
Mm.
mom was looking to protect us from that truth. So at 7, when I found out the truth of how he died, that's really when my heart activation happened because at that time we had been raised in the Catholic Church, and at that time the Catholic Church, at least the way I understood it, said that suicide was a sin. So the first thought that I had as a little girl was trying to imagine my dad in hell, which it sounds
Mm.
morbid, but that's what I thought was happening. I said, well, the church just says this about suicide. So I tried to imagine, and it wasn't as gruesome. It was more of a cartoon imagery of my dad's face, flames of hell. I was like, but the point is, in that moment, my whole body said, absolutely not. And this is what my opening chapter is and about my book. It's me realizing in a moment that I did not believe in a universe, a God, or a world that would take pleasure in inflicting pain on someone who was suffering, because I knew that my dad would not have done that had he not been suffering. So in that moment, I did choose my heart over my head, because the thoughts that had been given to me were that that this was a sin, it was bad, it was something to be judged, it was shameworthy. But my heart knew that that was wrong. I really felt in a huge way at that age that life was nothing but love, and the universe was nothing but love, and God, whatever you call it, is love. So I completely rejected that, and that changed everything for me, because I didn't carry shame. I didn't think my dad did it to me. I didn't think the world did it to me. So going forward, I believed in love. I believed in heart. And throughout my life, there's been vacillations between that knowing. And when we talk about the business world, one of my first big heart moments was soon after I got that job working for the concert promoter. I was around 20, couple years into working for him. And I was really good at that job. It fit like a glove, and I loved to organize like your wife does. And I was really in a leadership role at a young age. And I was looking to grow the company, to take on more clients. And I had a few people working under me at that point. And I was so obsessed with perfection and success that I was really hard on myself and I was really hard on them. But I didn't understand what I was doing until one of the girls came to me and told me straight up that they all despised me. And so I had a moment of like, oh my goodness, what have I done? I went home to my apartment. This is in the book as well, where I just had a moment of, what have I done? This is not who I am. I didn't realize how harsh I was being until that truth came up, but it made me stop and realize that I had been leading with my head, not my heart. And it really caused a huge pause for me to reconsider how I wanted to be in the business world. And there's been many more moments in my career where I have a moment of realizing that I ran off with the direction of my head. And the head, the brain, is fearful. It wants us to keep control. It wants us to stay exactly the same. It wants to predict the outcomes. And that's great for staying alive, but it's horrible for living a beautiful, expansive, heart-led life. So that's a few moments to share. Did I miss any parts of your question?
No, no, not at all. Not at
Okay.
all. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
You note that heart coherence, as you refer to it, helps us think more clearly and access intuition. What does that practice look like day to day, and how might reluctant entrepreneurs or any type of entrepreneur cultivate it?
I love this question because I feel like understanding this is the most important thing any human can start to embrace, because the heart is a powerful center that's been proven by science to affect us more than we understand. It has its own neural network, and it has over 40,000 neurons, and it sends more messages to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. So the heart has the ability to bring us into this harmonious state, which allows us to make better decisions. It allows us to access more intuition, to have a better stress response, to have a better state of emotion. So, what we want to do is seek heart coherence as often as possible. It is a practice, but you can learn it. I recommend anyone go to Heart Math Institute for a ton of resources on this. But heart coherence is really when your heart, mind, and emotions are all working in sync. Your stress response is lowered, your physiological responses are calmer. And the way to achieve it each day, there's a few ways. It can be calm, slow breathing, like taking some nice deep breaths for a few minutes. It can be focusing on gratitude. It can be walking in nature, snuggling with your pets. There's a lot of ways to achieve it, but it's really that place that we all know when we feel like we're in a state of flow. And when we're in that place, which is heart coherence, everything just has a magic to it. It's a lot more orderly and harmonious. And I really advise that as a tool for anyone as a very first step.
I have had several moments in my entrepreneurial journey where I am, as you call it, in the flow. And one of the hallmark telltales of knowing you're in the flow is time stops. It just I'll be in the flow, say coding. I in the early days I'm a software hack, but in the early days because I couldn't afford a real software programmer, I would code all of our software needs myself. I was a hack of a coder, and our machines all run on software that we build. So, but I would get in the zone or in the flow, and and I would start at 7 a.m. and an hour later, at 11:30 p.m., my wife would call and go, "Are you coming home?" I mean, like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that time just went by, and I had no perception of time. I had no distraction. I was in the zone. I was in the flow, and those are great moments because you're so productive and you're so creative, and there are no distractions, and it's just you and the universe just working in harmony, just getting stuff done beautifully, and it's hard to. Now it's easier for me, but back then those were rare moments, and I would seek to reproduce those moments and unsuccessfully because my head was in control of I'm going to get this flow moment. My head is telling me I'm going to do this, and of course your head just gets in the way of everything, right? So it almost has to be a heart-led moment, from my vantage point. It's easier to get there now, but it's not something one can force. It's a result of something. It's not really okay. I'm going to be in the flow now. From 12 to 1, I'm going to be in the flow. No, it doesn't work that way. It just kind of happens, at least at first, magically. What was the name of the Heart? Something about Heart Institute.
Yes, the Heart Math Institute has been around for over 30 years, and they are the research science-based organization that has dedicated all of their studies to the power of the heart. And they're an incredible organization, and I just can't say enough good things about them. But they have so many resources on their website. They have books, they have retreats, but it's really amazing because they focus on the science, which is really powerful because many people need that to take that next step towards it.
And for my listeners and viewers, I will have a link to Heart Math Institute in the show notes. So, when this is over, don't do it now. Finish the interview, but when this is over, check that out. Your company, Considerate Ventures, I want to talk about that for a few minutes. But before that, where did you get the name Considerate Ventures? That's a very interesting company name.
Well, I liked the word considerate. I've always, obviously, I've loved the heart and I've loved love for my whole life. It's always been something I've been pursuing and looking at how can I move it forward. And when I looked at my agency, I felt like considerate was a reachable word for most. I couldn't call it the love ventures, but considerate is a sense of kindness and respect and integrity. And I felt like it was a great word to encompass all the touch points that I wanted to make in my business.
Yeah, I love the name. I always love to get the story behind names because they usually have some kind of meaning.
Same.
So Considerate Ventures provides complex project management, strategic personnel planning, and other high-level services. Did you always intend to start your own agency, or were you initially hesitant to step into the role of an entrepreneur?
Well, I was very fortunate because I had this job with my concert promoter that I worked for, I think around 6 or 7 years. A few years into it, an agency came to me and asked me if I would start producing concerts and production elements for their corporate clients. So thankfully, because of that early job, I think I was 23 when I started picking up projects for them, I learned how to manage clients. So I was very fortunate that I learned how to be an entrepreneur from an early age. And it always suited me. I liked the freedom to say yes or no to things. And so really I've only had one official full-time job in my life, and that was for just over a year when I worked for Live Nation, which is the world's largest concert
Mm-hmm.
promoter. But other than that, I've always been paid as an independent contractor. I've always had freedom. So and it definitely runs in my family. So it was not a difficult step to take because I personally value freedom over the same consistency and security every day. But I was willing to make a ton of mistakes, and I certainly did.
So a few weeks ago, when we had a discovery call, you shared with me some of the bands that you toured with and were working behind the scenes with. Inform my audience some of the names that you've worked with in terms of the services that you were providing at the time.
Yeah, it's been a nice mix. I mean, I loved doing a show with Earth, Wind, and Fire. They were just fabulous. I loved their whole crew. And then ZZ Top and let's see, Lyle Lovett. I've worked on a show with Bono from U2, Shakira, um,
Wow.
REO Speedwagon. It's kind of ran the gamut from country to classic rock to really heavy rock. It's even Tejano bands. Like it's been a lovely mix and so much fun being in all of the artistry of it all.
You're working with or around pretty strong personalities, right? Who are accomplished in their own right, and then you're working with a lot of people surrounding those established personalities, strong personalities. So I would imagine there's a nuance to fitting into that crowd, and you're dealing with a lot of egos, you're dealing with a lot of people under pressure, you're dealing with timelines, you're dealing with some all the roadies, crazy fans, all this stuff. That must take an incredible amount of self-control and organizational skills and patience and kind of seeing over the horizon, eye on the prize kind of thing, keeping your eye on the goal. Where did that ability come from? Considering that you didn't have that growing up, your homeless friend probably wasn't a mentor in that regard. You seem to have a heart for service, the cheese and mustard sandwiches, for your friend, described that. But where did that ability come from? I mean, I consider myself fairly organized, but I don't think I could manage that, controlled chaos environment of a concert schedule.
Yeah, I think I assume some of it must be just innate, but I also think there's something to growing up in chaos. You develop a superpower skill of organizing it. And I became very attuned at reading the room at an early age and being the fixer and figuring out how to make things happen. And so that I got lots of practice as a young girl in that regard, because it was about survival. And I had to make sure that the people around me were going to like me and be happy with me because I needed them to, especially at school, for example, teachers, classmates, whatever the case was, I needed to survive. So I figured out really early how to deliver what people were needing and wanting, kind of almost intuitively. And I just think that was a big part of it and probably some innate natural talent for having a way of thinking about things. And then just starting off in the business so young, I had lots and lots of practice. I made, we all know as entrepreneurs, like the more mistakes you make, kind of the better because you develop, those are the best ways to learn how to be awesome. And I learned also early on not to have an ego about it. So my focus was on delivering success. That was where my pride was. I wanted to do a great job, and I took so much pride in that. I didn't care as much about being seen or noticed or recognized. That was there, of course, but really I was all about delivering success, and that's where my skills grew so much because I wasn't as focused on getting attention. I was more focused on actually acing the test.
Yeah.
So that
Ego is something that is helpful when you're starting a business, but totally detrimental when you're scaling a business. If it weren't for my ego, I never would have started my business. I needed my ego was my best friend, but it was both my propeller and my anchor simultaneously. And I had to learn at some point when I started to scale my business, I had to take my good buddy, my ego, who was my defender, always by my side, always pumping me up, I had to go, okay, little buddy, time to put you in this box, and I'll let you out once in a while when no one's around. But I had to know when to kind of part ways with my ego and set my sight on something bigger than that, because all it was doing was feeding me what I wanted to hear. It wasn't necessarily the truth, or the way the world saw me. Those who work with you describe you as an unassuming, elegant fixer, who brings calm, order, and warmth to clients. How has that identity informed your leadership style, and what have been the challenges of building a business around that?
Well, as far as my leadership style goes, I am a protector of people. So I like to let everyone save face. I don't like to call out people. So if I have a team, for example, I will. I want everyone to feel like they're heard and seen. And so just generally, I go into a group and I look at protecting everyone on the team, not just the top person. So I earn a lot of trust by having everyone's best interest in mind. So that's really a big part of my leadership is caring for the people involved and helping them manage things that might be very challenging for them. No, the challenge for me really was going too far in the fixing. So in the people pleasing aspect that so many of us struggle with. So I was definitely a yes person in the very earlier days of my career, even saying yes to the wrong clients. And we've all been there, I'm sure. But that's been the real challenge is knowing that I can be caring and heart led and take care of people, but make sure I'm taking care of myself as well. So that's been the biggest challenge is to get to that point and not let other people's needs overtake my life. So that's really been the biggest challenge and one that being heart led has helped me with so much.
Yeah, I found the hard way after many years that sometimes the most profitable word in my business is no.
Yeah.
And we used to lead with price and braggadocious advertising. Our stuff is great. Everyone else's sucks. Those were pretty much the message that we put out. And we attracted toxic customers, needy, toxic customers. And when we finally, saw the light and we switched to a marketing campaign of education and building authority and trust with our potential clients, and we stopped putting the focus on just selling machines, and we started putting the focus on educating our industry into solving problems that were affecting them, we started attracting customers looking for solutions and looking to partner with us. And we started attracting awesome, absolutely awesome clients. And they don't lead on price. They don't bang us over the head for discounts. They are not trying to scam us every 2 seconds. They actually work with us. They partner with us. And it's in the world of chemistry, the machines we make run on certain chemicals. So, we have to know a little bit about chemical. And there's this rule in chemistry called Hansen's law of solubility. And that's down a rabbit hole. But basically the saying there is like attracts like. And certain types of chemicals attract certain types of things. That's just the way the chemical works. And I think like attracts like can be applied to life. We attract what we put out. And when we put out toxicity and we put out hyper competitiveness and win at all costs, we attract similar types of people. And when we put out love and education and connection and trust, we attract people looking for those things. And that sounds like you learned the same thing in your business. You've said that you're most energized, and I love this thing about you. You've said you're most energized by serving people who use their influence for good rather than your own success. How has focusing on service over self-promotion influenced your motivation and success as a business owner?
So by pivoting my business focus towards clients who use their platform for good, I have found myself in a much more fulfilling space because not only am I using my talents to help people do more good in the world, I'm also working with clients who are really aligned with me and their mission. And in general, I'm just enjoying my days and I'm enjoying connecting with more people who are in that space, because it's always occurred to me from a young age, when you look at all of the movie stars, the rock stars, the wealthy, they have all of this power and they could influence so much good. And it never made sense to me that we wouldn't all be looking to do that. So it's just so much more enjoyable to be in the company of people who think the same way. And it's just continued inspiring me and growing in ways that I couldn't have anticipated.
Like attracts like.
Right.
In a blog post, and I love this, in a blog post you wrote that you can organize a festival for 100,000 people, yet discover your clothes are inside out. How do you embrace both the highly competent and the hot mess, as you put it, parts of yourself? And what can entrepreneurs learn from that level of honesty?
Well, this is one of my favorite things that I learned is it's really good to just own what we're great at and what we're not great at. People love it. So it is true that I can organize a festival for 100,000 people and lose my cell phone in the next minute. So I have this kind of two parts to me. And what I realize is by leading with that and letting it all hang out, for lack of a better word, everyone feels so much more comfortable in my space and they feel more empowered to be human themselves, because at the end of the day, we all have that inner hot mess in some way or another. So it's been a really big, powerful move, because in my early days, I used to show up in meetings thinking that I had to have all the answers and even pretending if I didn't. But now in meetings, if someone says a word I haven't heard before, I'm the first to say, "Excuse me, I have no idea what that means." And I can feel in the room what that does. It visibly lets the younger up and comers feel like, "Oh, you can do that." And then the more senior people be like, "Wow, I could do that." So it's great to know that we're all human. We're all messy, and the sooner we can just lead with that it just makes everything easier for everyone involved.
Yeah, drop the facade, right?
Yeah.
We're all, we all suffer from imposter syndrome, and at some point in our life or our career, and it's best to just admit what we don't know. And I think that humanizes people, and it, human nature is, for the average person anyway, is such that they don't view that as a vulnerability. They view that as, oh, I can help you and educate you. And most people are rooting for your success, not the other way around. Although the other way around exists, we all know them, but they are largely rooting for your success. Considerate Ventures intentionally maintains a small client base. How do you decide which projects to accept? And how does setting boundaries help your well-being and the quality of your work?
Well, this actually speaks to a big part of the book that we haven't talked about, which is how I get a yes from my heart and how I get a no from my heart. So in the book, I describe the heart saying yes with a feeling of being elated or lit up or feeling really good about something. And the heart gives you a no, or what I say, or ugh, which is when you feel depleted and drained and just not looking forward to something. So that's a practice that I use in my life, and it's helped me get connected to what's true for me and what my heart really wants. And so I use this with clients. So if I'm meeting a new client, for example, I really start to pay attention to what my heart feels. So if I'm starting to feel a little bit drained by their email, or something's not feeling right, I pay attention to that. And it does take practice and time to learn that skill. But I think a lot, and I spend a lot of time feeling how people feel to me, because the clients that feel great, like you said earlier, the toxic ones, those feel a certain way and they hit you a certain way. You feel depleted and drained. They're pulling at you. Your heart will feel a different way around a client who feels aligned. And so that's a big part of how I approach things, especially new people that come into my life, is I really consider how they're striking me. Is it feeling like an integrity and good, or is it feeling toxic and draining? And I have practiced this enough times to where I've made the wrong decision enough times to where I've learned that I have to trust what my heart is saying. Now, there is a time for all of us as entrepreneurs when you have to say yes for a paycheck, and I get that, but at least notice it and see how it's striking you, see how it's feeling. So in the future, you can start to pivot away from that type of client. But having boundaries has been wonderful. I mean, like you said earlier, the no can be so powerful. And I have seen that the more conscious I am of working with people, not just clients, but even vendors and other people that might come into my space, I really don't let anyone into my space that doesn't feel good, that doesn't feel aligned. And like I said, there are times you don't have that privilege, but by leading that way, it's improved the whole quality of my life and my business.
Yeah, that's a powerful takeaway. I think for my audience who are in the process of building their business, that is very sage advice. And it probably, if I heard that early in my career, I would think that's crazy. I'm like, someone's got cash and they want to give it to me, and I'm saying no. Makes no sense. I need to cover payroll. So I think as we build our businesses, a lot of the decisions we make are fear-based decisions. We're looking through the lens of money, or the lens of, a number of different lenses, and we make decisions just to satisfy that particular concern we have, and then we're just jumping from one fire to another, right? And we're not growing the business, at least successfully or profitably. The first time we have to say no to something is so difficult. I remember that, it was years ago, but I remember having to say, no, we can't do this. This is crazy. And my ego was screaming at me, and because we would have gotten an order away from our arch rival. And, to me, I would celebrate that. But then, the reality was we wouldn't make any money on it. It would probably damage our reputation, at least with them, because they wouldn't be happy with us. And we probably did our competitor the biggest favor, because we stopped them from losing money in dealing with this toxic customer. So we took the hit, and it was not a win-win. It was a lose-lose proposition. And the only win was on our competitor side. But that takes a lot of guts to do that, because it doesn't feel intuitive. It feels counterintuitive. But the moment we did it and realized, we dodged the bullet, something else way better came in and took its place. Magically, spiritually, I refer on the show a lot to the business gods, and I mean that metaphorically, but the business gods said, "Good move, Mike. We're going to throw you a bone. It's not all loss." And then you learn to trust that process, and you learn to trust your intuition and your heart. So we're recording this interview in September of 2025, while your book is in a pre-release stage, so people can pre-order your book. But rather than tell people how to pre-order it, by the time this airs, the book should be on the shelf. And if you're looking at the show notes down below, if you're watching this on YouTube or on your podcast app, look at the show notes, and I'll have information on how to order this book if you're so inclined. The book is entitled Leading with the Heart, The Courage to Trust Your Inner Wisdom and Rewrite Your Life. Before I ask you questions about your book, I'd like you to read from a LinkedIn post that you posted that describes chapter 5 of your book.
Okay, I'd be happy to. Thank you. Chapter 5 of Leading with the Heart focuses on the dark turn I took in life, a time when I had given up. Dropping out of 8th grade, drinking, drugging, I had sunk entirely into apathy. It wasn't rebellion for rebellion's sake. It was a quiet surrender. I was so disappointed in what life seemed to hold. You can see it written entirely on my face in this photo, taken on the last day of 7th grade, just before my 13th birthday. But for any of us in our seasons of darkness, the heart would never dream of saying, just get over it. Heart hibernation is exactly what we need during those times. It is the practice of giving yourself permission to retreat, rest, and be gentle with yourself during emotional seasons. It's okay to step back, snuggle up, and give yourself permission to do what's needed to get by. It's important to understand that every single last one of us endures dark seasons. It is baked into the human experience, and we can rise again when we are restored. But first, we must extend kindness, gentleness, and compassion for our very own selves. I didn't overcome this time with brute force, shame, and self-criticism. It was only by giving myself grace and by seeing this as a natural way life can go sometimes, despite however unfortunate. It's from that place of strength that we can return to ourselves, guided by the intelligence of our hearts.
The takeaway for me there, thank you for that. The takeaway for me there was give ourselves grace. And, when I started my business 33 years ago, I made every mistake known to mankind. In fact, last year I published the book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur book, and it's not a how-to book. I tell people it's a how not to book. Just don't do all the things I did, and chances are you'll be successful. But I used to beat myself up over the mistakes I made. And I consider myself pretty bright. I designed all the equipment that we sell to today, but I was making the worst mistakes in business. And, talk about ego. My ego was in a boxing ring with Mike Tyson. I think my ego's ear got bitten off. It was just tattered. And that was hard on me because up to that point in my career, I was pretty successful and I thought I could do it all. And I totally underestimated business. I was good on the tech side. I was terrible at the business side. And that messed with my head for a long time. And I started doubting everything that I thought I knew. Even stuff I did know, I was doubting that. But I think the idea of giving yourself some grace is super important for entrepreneurs to hear because we will make mistakes. In hindsight, I don't really think the proper word is mistakes. I think it's curriculum, it's learning, it's experience, and we learn more from our so-called mistakes, way more than we learn from our successes. I would much rather hire someone that has had a business and failed than someone that had 3 successful businesses in a row. And I say that because I could go to the roulette table in Vegas and I could win 10 games in a row. Does that mean I'm good? It's a game of chance. It means I'm lucky. So that doesn't tell me anything about them. I don't know if their businesses were successful because they're good or because they were lucky. But someone who makes a mistake and pays the price is not going to, generally speaking, not going to make that mistake again. They're going to grow and they're going to learn from it, hopefully. My money would be on someone who has failed and made some, pretty audacious mistakes, because that is, that's a master's in education equivalent. And, I think we're all, if you're in business on your own, if you're an entrepreneur, we're all in this kind of strange PhD program. And we didn't sign up for that, but that's what we're in, and we're learning. And the only way to get through all the mistakes we are all going to make is by giving ourselves grace. And, to me, that's a huge takeaway. What core themes do you explore in the book, and how might heart-led principles help entrepreneurs navigate uncertainty, which there's plenty of uncertainty in the business world?
And Mike, would you mind if I added more to what you just said?
Please.
Okay, just to go back to what your point was earlier. What I would add to what you just said is that the experience of having many mistakes in your career, it adds a level of humility that we all really need in our day-to-day life as entrepreneurs, because then it allows us to understand that we're all in this together. It happens to all of us. And when I look at some of the leaders that I've worked with, the famous or the super uber wealthy types, they're still making mistakes too. So I think it's really important to hold that if you make a mistake, like you said, it's a curriculum. It's not a bad thing. It's like, okay, cool, I just learned something new. Do not feel bad about yourself. Just take the lesson and keep going, because the mistakes will always be there forever and ever and ever. It's just a new level of mistake. And no one ever gets to a point of no more mistakes. So I think it's really important to just feel good about yourself and go forward in a strong way.
Yeah. I think that's a huge takeaway right there. So going back to my earlier question, what core themes do you explore in the book, and how might heart-led principles help entrepreneurs navigate uncertainty, which there is a ton of in the business world?
Yes. Well, the biggest core the biggest core theme is the one I touched on earlier, which is how to make a decision that is from your heart versus your head. Because as we discussed earlier, the head is about keeping you alive and predictable, which means keeping you the same, which means keeping you as the same person you were yesterday, which none of us wants. We all want to keep growing and keep expanding. So the biggest theme from the book is, how do I know if this is a yes from my heart or a no from my heart? And when you start doing that with the small decisions in life, it will start to become a practice that you can take into the big decisions in your life. So, for example, when I decided to write my book, I was planning on growing my business to the next level. And when I realized it was time to scale it back for a second so I could focus on this book, my head was shouting and screaming and stomping its feet. It did not want me to do that. It was like, Megan, you're crazy. You're supposed to be, this is your time. Like, go bigger, go better. Who do you think you are that you could actually just take a second to focus on something else? I had all these warning signs, but my heart was so lit up and so elated by writing this book. And when I decided to write the book, I looked at my sheet of paper telling me all the reasons I shouldn't. But the yes reasons were so much bigger. So it took a lot to pivot, and it made no sense to my brain. But I did it. And now that I'm on the other side of it, it's only made my business world better. It's only made my world bigger. So the biggest takeaway from the book is how to start choosing from your heart, even with the people you hire, the people that you work with, the contractors you consider. And then aside from that, it's other themes like taking your personal adversity and using it for transformation, and how to be more authentic in your everyday, day-to-day living, and how to be more resilient, which all of those are heart themes. But in general, the thing about business is, if we use our brains to lead our businesses, it's going to stay the same as yesterday. So it's really about expanding from a place that is not cookie cutter. It's unique to you and what will suit you and your lifestyle and your business best. So our heads might say, for example, sure, grow the company like I was planning on doing. My heart said, no, take a pause for a minute. And now I can go back to growing. So the idea is getting information from the right resource, because the brain is great for analyzing, but it is not great for expanding and growing.
That is such sound advice. I wish I had heard that sooner in my career. So your clients range from global education leaders to Grammy-winning artists. How have you learned from working with such different personalities, and how do you adapt your approach to each? They are strong personalities, all of them.
Yeah, I think the first thing is going back to what I said earlier. It's knowing that we're all human. So I know that every human has a hot mess happening somewhere behind the scenes. So it's really knowing that everyone is really just the same as the next person. So going in and realizing that they have in their worlds fewer people that are that comfortable with them. So it's really important for them to feel like they have someone that they can trust, that isn't going to be a yes person, that isn't going to treat them different. So I think just by walking into their worlds and feeling comfortable with them, they're allowed to feel comfortable with me, which is a huge plus. But really what I've learned the most is that, in the beginning, I thought it was so exciting to have access to these people who had made it. And I really just discovered that they haven't really made it. It just looks different. Like, none of us has ever achieved the mountaintop truly. Like, we're always going to have certain things to grapple with. So my approach is just to go in and help them the best I can. And especially with people at their level, they have more people looking to take, less people looking to give. And so me going in there truly looking at service is what makes all the difference.
Well, we're starting to run out of time, so I'm just going to ask you a couple more questions. For those who feel drawn to entrepreneurship but are hesitant to step forward, what single practice or mindset shift from your own journey would you encourage them to adopt?
I would encourage them to focus on not trying to eat the elephant all at once. Just take little baby bites and know that it's scary for everyone, no matter what level they're at. So just start to take some small steps and just give yourself time to grow into it. And it's okay to be really messy, because for certain, all of us have been.
Yeah, good advice. And finally, how did you define success when you first started your company, and how do you define it today?
Well, when I first started early on in my career, just success for me was external. It was how I looked, how I impressed, what my roster looked like. And now success for me is how I feel. Do I enjoy my days? Do I love what I'm doing? Am I feeling fulfilled? Am I giving back? Am I receiving? So it's really gone from an external to an internal form of success for me. And the interesting thing is that the more internal success I have, it reflects externally.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, Meghan Cathlin, Considerate Ventures, thank you so much for being my guest today. Thank you for for very candidly sharing your journey, as difficult as it was in your childhood. You certainly landed on your feet is an understatement. And thank you for sharing the information on heart-led decision-making and running a company from the heart, not from the head. I think that is sage advice for anyone that's in business or considering starting a business. And even if they're not in their own business, if they're sitting in a cubicle, I think that's great advice. When will your book be available for purchase? I think it's October something?
It is October 14th, 2025.
Okay, well, if you're listening to this or watching this after October 14th, look down in the show notes if you're watching this on YouTube where it says see more, and there'll be a link to purchase the book. Is it going to be Amazon? Is that the
Yes, Amazon's the way.
Excellent. I'll give you the Amazon link right there so you could check out Meghan's book. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app when it's safe to do so, look at the show notes there, and information on Meghan's book as well as the other references will be there as well. So Meghan, continued success. I don't think good luck is the right word, because you don't need it. You're in control of your own destiny. You're doing a great job. And thanks for sharing your journey with me and my audience. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mike, and for all you do and for all the entrepreneurs helping all of us grow and be better. Thank you for all of your service.
Oh, thank you. And that's a wrap. Thanks again for joining me for this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. A very special thanks to Meghan Cathlin for being my guest on the show. If you're listening to this podcast on your favorite podcast app, you may also want to check out our YouTube channel. The link is in the show notes. And while you're there, be sure to click like and subscribe. Those two very simple clicks really help us spread our reach. If you're watching this podcast on our YouTube channel, you can take the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast on the go. It's available on all major podcast sites. We've already recorded upcoming episodes with fascinating guests, so be sure to subscribe to be notified when new episodes drop. New episodes are released twice a month on the first and third Tuesday. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a great guest, I'd love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com to apply or recommend a guest. You can also reach me directly at mike@reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com. And time for a quick shameless plug. If you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon and as an audiobook on both Audible and Amazon. Thanks again so much for listening or watching. Until next time, be unstoppable.